Chapter 5. One Person, Two Natures. Doppelgangers point to the struggle of dual natures and their resolution in the God-man. I enjoy speaking with Rawlings readers, young and old, for a variety of reasons. To be honest, a great many in every Harry Potter audience I speak to, from schools and bookstores to churches and fan conventions, know the book's details much better than I do, so I always learn something. Then, there's the fun of talking about a great story and its meaning, either to me personally or in the grand scheme of things, with thoughtful people. Really, I live for those times. What they tell me they get out of the talks, besides the kick they get out of reminding me again how to pronounce Hermione's name, you'd think I was Victor Crumb, is seeing the stories diagonally. By that, I mean seeing the common elements of all the books rather than thinking of the stories in narrative sequences of event after event. Certainly, the hero's journey and alchemical formula is a wow to them, but the biggest wow comes when we begin to talk about doppelgangers. Doppel-whatsits? I feel a little bit like Hagrid with one of his nasty pets when I introduce that word. Anyway, it just means double goer in German, and there really isn't an English equivalent. The term is used to describe a shadow character. A doppelganger is a character or creature's complementary figure or shadow, which reveals aspects of its personality otherwise invisible. Think of Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Mary W. Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein and his monster. Rowling has created doppelgangers that, like Jekyll and Hyde, are in the same body, and at least one, like Frankenstein and the monster, that is in separate bodies. You might find one, maybe two, shadow characters in a common novel. But what makes this so important in understanding the books we're discussing is that almost every character in Harry Potter is something of a doppelganger. Specifically, the Harry and Voldemort relation is key to understanding the meaning of the books and why they are so popular. Let's take a look first at how pervasive this idea really is in the book's characters, and then take a close look at Harry and his dark shadow in order to get at the transcendent meaning of this character device in the stories. Many of Rowling's characters, for instance, are animagi. These are masters of the magical subject of transfiguration who can change at will into an animal shape. The animagi we know of include James Potter, who is a white stag, Sirius Black, who is a black dog, Peter Pettigrew, who is a rat, Minerva McGonagall, who is a cat, and Rita Skeeter, who is a bug. We know Albus Dumbledore was a transfiguration master as well as being an accomplished alchemist. However, in Half-Blood Prince, he died without revealing if he was a white bumblebee animagus, because his name means white bumblebee, or the tawny owl that appears in several places throughout the series, and we don't learn anything about this in Deathly Hallows from his portrait or Severus's memories. We'll have to wait for Rowling's backstory encyclopedia. This shape-changing stunt is not just a plot device or part of every magical novel's repertoire. The shape each animagus takes is a pointer to his or her hidden character. For example, Peter Pettigrew, who is a rat animagus, is the rat Fink who betrayed the Potters to Voldemort. The animal figure is a shadow or doppelganger that allows us to see more clearly the outline of the true person. Rowling, via this second figure or shape of the person, gives us a clearer look at what may not be so obvious from the first view. A variant on animagi is the Patronus shape each character projects. The Patronus charm, Expecto Patronum, produces an animal figure and is the only effective defense against the soul-sucking Dementors. Harry's Patronus, quite appropriately, is a white stag. Cho Chang's is a swan, and Hermione's is an otter. Doppelgangers of the Jekyll and Hyde sort, meaning the shadow is an aspect within a person rather than another person, are often a simple matter of birth. Harry's world is populated with what Dolores Umbridge hates, half-breeds. Rubeus Hagrid and Olympe Maxine, for instance, are the children of giants and magical persons, half-giants. Fleur Delacour's grandmother was a Vila, a beautiful woman who grows a beak and scaly wings when enraged. Then there are witches and wizards born from Muggle parents. Lily Evans Potter and Hermione Granger are the most notable Muggle-born characters, and Colin Creevey and his brother have to be the most fun. Tom Riddle, aka Lord Voldemort, is a half-breed as well, because his mother was a witch and his father a Muggle. That his own followers are unaware of this suggests he has concealed his double life. Harry has an honorary membership to this club because though both his parents were magical persons, his mom was Muggle-born. He grew up with Muggles, and for many years he was totally unaware of his magical heritage or abilities. In addition to these half-breeds and shape-changers, we also have a category of shape-changers that do so because of their birthright or because of some tragic occurrence. Nymphadora Tonks is a metamorph magus who is able to change shape at will, which is a handy trick for disguise in her work as an Auror. Tonks' husband, Remus Lupin, much less fortunately, is a werewolf who is only able to control his dangerous transformations by way of difficult-to-brew and ill-tasting potions. Rowling has left clues in every book, some quite open, that suggest Severus Snape is a half-vampire, though she has insisted in interviews that he is not a full-blooded vampire, a la Count Sanguini. If this is not a MacGuffin, or a red herring, then the Half-Blood Prince, aka Severus Snape, also has a meaningful shadow life, in addition to his being a double agent, and there are more. The books also include a host of threshold characters, whom scholars call luminal, from the Latin word limen, which means threshold or doorway. These folk stand in the doorway between two worlds, which amounts to their living in two worlds, or so far to the periphery of their own world that they cannot fit into the usual categories, good guy or bad guy, insider or outsider, for instance. Severus Snape is a good example, half-vampire or no. The Potions Master, as a former Death Eater and member of the Order of the Phoenix, lives and moves in both supposedly exclusive domains. Other threshold doppelgangers include the other Death Eaters and Dumbledore supporters, all of whom conceal their loyalties. The Dursleys, Dobby, Winky, Firenze, Peter Pettigrew, Neville Longbottom, the Squibs, Argus Filch and Arabella Fig, Mundungus Fletcher, and Percy Weasley. And of course, there is Polyjuice Potion. By means of this magical draft, Harry Potter characters can for a brief time transform into other characters. Ron and Harry become Crabbe and Goyle in order to visit the Slytherin common room in Chamber of Secrets, and Barty Crouch, Jr., hoodwinks all of Hogwarts into thinking he's Alistair Mad-Eye Moody for the whole of Goblet of Fire. Deathly Hallows begins with Harry's escape from the Dursleys being disguised by 6 Polyjuice Harry Potters taking off in different directions from the real Harry. I think the only Jekyll and Hyde folk I haven't mentioned are those who aren't folks. Rowling's menagerie of magical creatures includes a host of half-breed, double-natured creatures. The centaurs, with the head and chest of a man and the body and legs of a horse, are a notable example, as are the merpeople, hippogriffs, and the sphinx. Though not exactly half-breeds, special mention should be made of the phoenix, thestrals, and unicorns in the Potter books, because they are not what they seem, namely bird or horse, or even bird, horse, dragon. Now for the pairs. So far, all the shadow characters or doppelgangers I have mentioned have been internal ones. That is, the mirrored aspects are within a single person or creature. It is just as common for there to be 2 persons in which the one is a revealing reflection of the other. Again, like Dr. Frankenstein and his monster, are a good example of this shadowing. In Harry Potter, Rowling sets up quite a few such pairs for our consideration, besides the obvious sets of twins, Fred and George Weasley, and the Patil sisters. Other notable Potter pairs include Slytherin and Gryffindor, opposing houses; Hagrid and Grop, giant brothers; Draco and Dudley, frequently paired in Harry's mind; Harry and Draco, generational leaders of opposing houses; Sirius and James, Harry's godfather and father; Ron and Hermione, friends with opposing personalities; Hagrid and Harry, 2 orphans at Hogwarts; Lily and Petunia, opposing mother figures; Peter and Neville, a cross-generational pair of lookalikes; Harry and Neville, joined by the prophecy, Grindelwald and Dumbledore. Rowling has paired these characters, be it through hatred, mutual delight, or historical accident, for a reason. While many authors use this writing device to highlight one conflict or draw the reader further into the drama, Rowling uses it everywhere. Look at the list above. Have we left anybody out? The only people not animagi, half-breeds, characters living in the borderlands between communities or pairs, are Nazis. Not literally Nazis, of course. I mean witches and wizards, self-styled purebloods who hate muggle-born magical persons, and half-breed magical creatures. Dolores Umbridge personifies this spirit of eugenics in the magical community, in which the concern for purity of blood marks even families that don't openly support Voldemort and the Death Eaters. In Deathly Hallows, she leads the Ministry's witch hunt for all non-pureblood magical persons to take back the magical powers they cannot have acquired honestly, that is, by birth. So what? I suppose the case could be made that everything in existence evidences some sort of polarity, male and female, tall and short, etc. Maybe you can even screw yourself into a knot and believe that all these pairings and doppelganger figures in the Potter novels, and the central conflict between purebreds and half-breeds, are a remarkable coincidence, or some sort of idée fixe on the author's part, except that the outcomes of the books hinge on the relation of Harry and Voldemort, a classic doppelganger pairing. Understanding this specific relationship reveals why the rest of the book is cramped with half-breeds, outsiders, and orphans. The Harry/Voldemort shadow, the pivotal antagonism of the series, points to the duality in every human being. The way Rowling resolves it in the series finale uncovers why her good guys are all bipolar, in a manner of speaking, and why we identify with them rather than the purebloods. The Harry and Voldemort doppelganger. Order of the Phoenix begins with 3 mentions of Harry's feeling that his skull has been split in 2, and one has to imagine it must crack right down that jagged scar on his forehead. It turns out, as we learn by book's end, that Harry's head really is divided, and he has an unwelcome guest. He isn't carrying a passenger like Quirrell, nor is he possessed as was Ginny in Chamber of Secrets. Rather, Harry has a double nature, or shadow, in his link to Voldemort, and his inability to turn inward and confront this shadow is the cause of the tragedy in Order of the Phoenix's battle royale. Harry's literal schizophrenia, or double-mindedness with Voldemort, really evidences itself in Order of the Phoenix, but each of the preceding books hints at it. Harry's scar, the mark he received from the curse that failed to kill him as an infant, always burns, for instance, when Voldemort is in a rage. Harry has the ability, known as Parseltongue, to speak to snakes from Voldemort via the curse, and quite a few times Harry has been able to see the goings-on in Lord Voldemort's surroundings in his dreams, as in the opening to Goblet of Fire. Order of the Phoenix just marks the first times that the Dark Lord took advantage of his tie with Harry to manipulate his thinking. We also learn in Order of the Phoenix that Harry and Voldemort were initially joined by a prophecy. It had been foretold just before Harry's birth that the one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, and that either the Dark Lord or his prophesied vanquisher must die at the hands of the other. Harry, it seems, must kill his ugly relation, or be killed, because Rowling had guaranteed that there would only be 7 Harry Potter novels. A lot of fans were concerned when the prophecy was revealed that Harry's future looked dim. As I argued in Chapter 2, Harry and Voldemort, besides being doppelgangers, are both representatives of the primeval Gryffindor/Slytherin feud. Though it is never spelled out in the books, Rowling has left clues in each book that Harry is also the heir of Gryffindor. We learn in Chamber of Secrets that Voldemort is certainly the heir of Slytherin. Voldemort has a split history, but his blue blood comes through his magical mom, who died at his birth. We will interpret names further in Chapter 10, but it will help here to recall that Voldemort is not the Dark Lord's given name. His real name is Tom Riddle, which, because Thomas comes from the Aramaic word for twin, is a pointer to how important the doppelganger structure is to these stories. Voldemort's given name means twin enigma. The riddle we have to solve, then, is what meaning, if any, is there to this doubling or twin motif in Harry Potter. Alchemy helps unwrap the riddle. As you'll recall, the principal activity of alchemy is the chemical marriage of the imbalanced arguing couple, masculine sulfur and feminine quicksilver. These 2 qualities have to be reconciled and resolved, die and be reborn, before they can be rejoined in a perfected golden unity. Opposites have to be reconciled and resolved for there to be a new life. One part of a pairing or both must die for there to be new life. Alchemists frequently cited Christ's words, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone, but if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit." See John chapter 12, verse 24. Alchemists took this verse and their hope of eternal life in Christ's death and resurrection as scriptural confirmation that their doctrines were correct. Remember that Christianity and most of the great revealed traditions differ from conventional ideas of what a human being is. The biology textbooks we grew up with offer a strictly naturalist or materialist idea, which, to risk simplification, restricts explanation of everything about the human being to his or her body. The mind is just chemical reactions in the brain, and life itself is about genetic programming and biochemistry. The great religious and philosophical thinkers disagree. They argue that the human person isn't just a body with invisible aspects, but a body-soul, psychosomatic unity, in which the soul or spirit is the prior or greater part. Death to these thinkers is not natural, but an effect of the corruption of the soul, usually attributed to the fall of man. Carnal-mindedness, one's soul being tied to the body and personal advantage, is death, according to St. Paul. Spiritual-mindedness, or focusing on the greater transcendent qualities of life, is life and peace. See Romans chapter 8, verse 6. This duality in every human person and the contrary tendencies to be more about individual ego than love and the spirit is the reality that every revealed tradition explains and attempts to transcend. Christianity has the seeming impossibility of uniting opposites like soul and body right at its heart. Hence the Virgin Mother you meet right at the beginning of Christ's story, and Jesus himself being simultaneously perfect God and perfect man. Back to Harry's shared nature, but different essence with Voldemort, and all the doppelgangers that populate the pages of the Potter epic. Rowling makes the two being one connection joining Lord Voldemort and Harry all but explicit in chapter 21 of the Order of the Phoenix. Harry has just witnessed, while dreaming, through his mind linked with Voldemort, the snake attack on Arthur Weasley. He tells the tale to Dumbledore, and while waiting for magical transit to Grimmauld Place, watches the headmaster do a smoke augury. The smoke augurer puffs out some smoke, which takes the shape of a serpent's head, mouth wide open. Dumbledore murmurs, naturally, and asks, but in essence divided? The smoke serpent answers in the affirmative by neatly splitting into two snakes. Interpreting the smoke snake augury works on two levels. As Rowling has said, the scene in the headmaster's office shows us Dumbledore playing through his own theory about what's happened, and his theory is, of course, correct. That Voldemort, as summed up by the snake, is divided via Horcruxes. But the scene is more than confirmation of Dumbledore's theory that Lord Voldemort has divided his soul. It's at least as much about Harry's ability to see through Nagini's eyes. Dumbledore's first question to the augurer was about Harry's assertion. "I was the snake. I saw it all from the snake's point of view," he said. The question Dumbledore asked the augurer was, perhaps, is there a shared nature here between Voldemort and this young man? The single smoke serpent form suggests the answer from the augurer is yes, there is. They share a serpent nature. Then Dumbledore asks, but in essence divided? Again, a yes answer, one nature, two essences. This confirms that Nagini is a Horcrux, though Dumbledore does not list Nagini with any certainty as a Horcrux in Half-Blood Prince. But again, it is also about Harry as a Horcrux. Perhaps the phrase, one nature, two essences, doesn't make you sit up and slap your forehead. Folks don't kill each other anymore, or as often at least, over who Jesus is. So I guess that's understandable, but when they did, the fight was often about the nature and essence of Christ. The first great heresy in Christianity was the Arian heresy, in which a priest named Arius argued that Christ was not God in essence, and that he had only a human nature. The heretics tended to square off by reducing Christ to either a divine nature, but not really human, or a human nature, but not really divine. The Church insisted, in the Council of Chalcedon, AD 451, that Christ has two natures, both fully divine and fully human. In his divine nature, he was able to conquer sin and death and rise again in his human nature. Christians believe they are able to share in his resurrection and inherit eternal life, one divine essence, two perfect natures. Back to Harry and his bad twin, Tom. When Dumbledore gets the message from the Auguror that Harry and Voldemort are one in nature and two in essence, what are we supposed to make of that? First, we can see that Harry and Voldemort are a doppelganger pair, something like mirrored images of the other. They have the same nature, certainly, the fallen nature Christians believe we all have as a result of the sin in the garden. Second, we can see that Harry is moving toward resolution of this struggle of two natures by choosing life, not death, spiritual mindedness, love, and sacrifice, rather than his own advantage, physical comfort, or power. Tom Riddle has the same fallen nature, but has chosen the way of death, an essential difference. This difference is only made clearer by the revelations of Lord Voldemort's pursuit of immortality via the creation of 6 Horcruxes, in which he inserts a piece of his soul into an object after murdering another human being. This path of death has made Lord Thingy into something hardly human. Harry's choice of life and what is good, in contrast, has made him even more clearly an image of his Father in heaven and what Dumbledore calls pure in heart, compared to Matthew chapter 5 verse 8, and a soul that is untarnished and whole. We learn at the end of Deathly Hallows that Harry actually has one of Voldemort's soul fragments, courtesy of the curse that failed to kill him as a child. Because he used Harry's blood to reconstitute his body at the end of Goblet of Fire, Lord Voldemort has forged a bond with Harry and the sacrificial love of Lily, Harry's mother, in his body. As Dumbledore explains to Harry at King's Cross, the soul fragment in Harry protected Voldemort from death as long as Harry was living, and the bond of blood in the Dark Lord's body meant that Voldemort was reciprocally Harry's life insurance policy. Lord Voldemort doubled the bond between you when he returned to human form, Dumbledore said. The answer to this seeming endless loop, one or the other of the Harry/Riddle pair has to sacrifice himself to the other to eliminate his enemy's foe immortality. Harry, of course, having already died to himself several times in this series, lets Voldemort kill him in the Forbidden Forest at the end of Deathly Hallows, and the soul fragment is destroyed, while Harry survives. The evil within him having been destroyed and having been saved again by the sacrificial love of his mother, Harry goes on to vanquish the external evil, the remnant of the evil already destroyed. In other words, Harry and Voldemort, with their mirrored and magically joined bodies and souls, are reflections of the body-soul unities that we all are, and of the choice each of us makes between carnal and spiritual mindedness. For whatever reason, call it the fall if you like, our hearts are dark, and this choice isn't easy. But making the hard, right choices, we can die to that evil within, and having won the interior battle, the exterior enemy is defeated when we choose to confront him. And all the other characters with doppelganger issues? Their duality isn't the straight-up Jekyll and Hyde, good and evil polarity of shared fallen nature, soul-to-soul fragment, and different essence consequent to their different choices, as Harry and Voldemort are. Their contrary cores are like the body-soul aspects that make every human person. The answer to their internal issues, though, is resolved the same way Harry destroys his interior and exterior Voldemort, by making the hard choices for the good, the loving, and the sacrifice of self. They transcend this interior duality and become androgynous, like the alchemists, and Christians who, in the sacrificial love of the Nazarene, are neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. See Galatians 3, verse 28. In our world of Republicans and Democrats, rich and poor, hawk and dove, Rowling puts her finger on the issues of body and soul that concern us all. She points to the spiritual resolution of our troubles as the necessary inner victory and the beginning of the answer to the external conflicts and contrary ideologies that separate us. As we'll see in the next chapter, this concern about prejudice, is one of Rowling's biggest themes, and she has set the stage of her alchemical drama with her cast of mixed breeds, doppelgangers, and purebloods to teach us a remarkable lesson in story form.